Hello and welcome to the Flywheel Effect. This week's episode is all about school leadership. Specifically, how does a new leader change the culture at a new school? This week's guest is Mr. AJ Bianco. He's assistant principal at Eastbrook Middle School in New Jersey. AJ is a renowned educator. He's also a podcast host and a great leader at his own school. And we're going to talk to AJ about a scenario that I think a lot of you out there are going to find familiar. So if you're a current leader or aspiring leader, I think this is one you're going to enjoy. Happy listening.
No time, no tools, big expectations. How do you transform school culture without derailing the train? Answer: little wins that bring big changes. The Flywheel Effect. Harnessing the power of momentum to create a school culture that celebrates change and drives itself.
Hey, AJ, did I miss anything before we jump into our show?
Nah, I think the only thing that really identifies me is husband, father of three. That's the biggest pride of my life. You know, education is wonderful. Podcasting is fun. I love my sports, but you know, being a dad and being a husband is most of my time.
I left off the most important part, and that's exactly right. So, anybody out there, school leaders that are listening, you know, if you're raising a family too, you guys probably understand how busy AJ is. So we're really thankful for his time tonight. We're going to have kind of a unique episode tonight because we're going to do kind of a focus on leadership and leadership transitions with AJ. So the idea behind this is to kind of put him in the shoes of where a lot of our leaders have been in the last year and are going to be coming out of next spring, and kind of work through what he would do to fix the culture of a school if you're taking it over. So like if you're hired at a new school and you did not have previous ties there, that kind of thing. So kind of what I want to lay out is a scenario that a lot of folks found themselves in. So if you're going to a new school, let's say this school has, in the last 3 years, year to year, they're losing 20% of their staff. And that kind of high turnover school, which a lot of places are seeing right now. And let's say the same school has really high discipline referral rates and low attendance overall student-wise. So we'll just stick with those three things because that's three things I think that our listeners can relate to, probably pretty much no matter where you are out there listening. If you are a school leader, whether or not you took over a school or you incumbent of school, everybody kind of inherited a new school when we came back from pandemic. So everybody's sort of in that boat. But, you know, just kind of walk us through how are you adjusting the culture and climate of a school in that scenario?
Yeah, you know those three things are definitely the big targets right now. Right? Losing staff, poor discipline, low attendance. You know, I personally am relationships first. You know, I know discipline is incredibly important for, you know, putting kids in line, getting them to buy in. But you know, for me, it's relationships first, and I think when we look at the students and we look at how they come to school and why they come to school, a lot of students don't want to be there, right? A lot of teachers don't want to be there. But for the students, you know, they come every day because they have to. It's something they need to do. They're forced out the door, and they come to a place where they have to feel like they belong and they have to feel safe. So when we look at our schools, like we really need to be the relationships first, you know, starting with the students, getting to know who they are. And you know, every morning I'm outside with the principal of the school, and we're welcoming every single student that is either walking or dropped off or taking their bike to school. You know, we're out there for every single kid. Big smile on our face. Good morning. We try to call them by name, and sometimes they get shocked. Like, whoa, how do you know my name? Like, you know, I know it's like it's November, it's December, and you know we know a lot of our kids, but understanding who they are is what's going to make them want to come to school. So first of all, it's about relationships, students and staff. And I think, you know, one of the things you said was we're losing staff. We have a high turnover. It's not always the school that's the problem. And we have to understand that. We can't just sit back and say, oh, I'm losing staff. I have to feel bad for myself. Is your school a place that your staff wants to come to? Do they feel like they belong? Are they on a team that they're comfortable with? You know, and I think when you're starting a school, when you're coming back to a school from the pandemic or whatever the situation may be, you know, just taking a few minutes to just meet with your staff and asking them, you know, a couple of questions. You know, what's something you love? What's something that you don't love? And what's something you want to change? And I really think those questions are very important. Now, did I ask those questions to all my staff when I first came into this building? No. I asked them a couple of things as we're, doing introductions, and we're trying to find, a comfort during pre-observations. But, I think as you start talking to your staff and getting to know them, and kind of understanding what they stand for, those relationships are what's going to get your staff to want to come to school. Like, joking around, finding theme weeks, finding something simple as a jeans day, right? Giving them the space so they feel comfortable and they feel like they belong. I think that we're really going to see a big change for when people come to work and come to school and have smiles on their face. Something so simple as coming in the building with music blasting at the front entrance. Like, all that's going to change, like the tone of the school and how people walk up to that door, and like they're ready to go when they have a smile on their face.
Yeah, the music part is kind of a good. That's a good advice for even places other than schools. Think about places you've went into and you liked how it felt. You're like, oh, I'm supposed to be here. Like, think about a restaurant. Ever went to a restaurant where you felt like, I don't know if they even want me here? Like, that happens sometimes. But there's some places you're like, oh, this is my vibe. I'm in the right spot. Those kind of things help. You mentioned that, calling folks by their name, and like, just, hi AJ. Those things, that goes so far. So like, that stuff goes a long way. And you mentioned finding something that your staff loves and cares about. Those things, they take a little work, but they're worth it. They're very much worth it. And that goes for kids too. And if you got a big building, it's hard to know a little something about everybody. But you'd be surprised if you're active and around, how many names you can remember. And how many like little touch points you can remember, like even just a little detail. Like there was I remember specifically, like I would always talk about like tennis shoes with kids. I was real good at knowing like the new Jordans were out. I could ask them about that kind of stuff. But kind of a weird skill that I had was remembering everybody's favorite team. Like if they ever wore the team like one time, I could remember, that's my guy. He's the 49ers fan. And I could mention that they just traded for McCaffrey or something. And like that would, no matter what the situation was, he would automatically, guard goes down. Oh, you knew, you remembered that. So those things, they take some work, but they're not out of reach. They can be done.
You're right. And it's never out of reach. Like, I can't tell you the simple things that have happened that like pop up into my mind. So I'll give you an example real quick. I was sitting outside talking to the principal about the World Series a couple weeks ago. We're sitting there and just talking, having a conversation, this team, and a kid walks by and he heard World Series. He's a fifth grader, right? We have 600 kids in our building, so it's not like it's a huge school. But the kid looked at us and he goes, "You guys talking about the World Series?" I'm like, yeah. He stopped what he was doing, joined our conversation, like we were talking to him from the beginning. Like, when you talk about small things, like I would not have known this kid was a big baseball fan, but he stopped, had a quick conversation. The next day he came back and we made sure when we saw that kid come through the door, we mentioned something like, "Hey, did you watch the game last night?" Or what do you think about that play? Just so we got him. Right now, all of a sudden I go outside for recess. There's my little man with his friends and they're all coming over to me talking about baseball. Like, that is the small shift that's going to do amazing things for your school. I tell the kids all the time, I'm old now, right? So I'm not hip to anything they got going on with music, clothes. I'm an old man now. So I try to find the little things that I can that just makes them smile. Whether it's me making fun of myself, I find one little thing that I can kind of bring into a conversation so they feel comfortable talking. I'm not cool with the music that goes on these days. I'm still rocking the 90s hip hop and all that stuff that I used to listen to. I love that. So I try to, right, I mean, come on, you can't let that go. I try to compare the music that I listened to back in the day to what they're listening to today, just so I have some kind of conversation with them. It doesn't matter. I don't mind looking like a fool just to make them smile and feel like they have a place in the school building. Little shifts, those little things that's really going to change a relationship is really going to drive how the students react and how they act in classrooms and what they do. If they can talk to administration in a positive way, they're definitely going to feel comfortable talking to their teachers in a positive way, who they see more often and for longer periods of time.
It's huge because think about the attendance issue that I'm not going out on a limb to say it's kind of been an issue all across the country. There's a big issue in my school, pretty much everywhere. Maybe specifically this kind of scenario we're talking about is definitely an issue in that place. But if you're putting yourself in the kid's shoes, if you go to a place every day that you have to go to, like you said, and nobody knows anything about you, it's real easy for you to kind of just be like, I'm not really feeling it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to avoid that no matter what. But if you have that connection with somebody, it could be as small as asking about the World Series. Mr. Bianco, he talks to me every day. I'm going to go at least say hi to him, and then they're there for the day, and they're talking to their teachers. And you just opened up a whole door of possibilities for the kid.
And I know that there's definitely some circumstances you can't change. Like some people, you just can't get to school. We had a situation where there was a young lady who literally could not get to school because her parents would not let her walk across busy streets, and the parents were working. So she either came to school late or she missed the entire school day. But we worked with that parent to make sure we explained why. Why are we calling so often? Why do we care so much? Having that conversation, the mother started to understand these people are not just, doing their job. They want my daughter in school because they want to see her succeed. When we talk about attendance, our kids are going to want to come to school because at least one person in that building is going to recognize them. Either it's, like you said, staff member, administration, CST, counselor, whatever the case may be. Like, even if it's just one friend, find ways to connect and build a relationship as small as it may be, so that kid is recognized every single day.
So kind of the follow up to that, which you kind of brought me into there, because when you're talking about a school community, you're talking about all the staff and students, of course, but you're also talking about the parents too, and then community members as well. Now, in a place that has high referrals and low attendance and high turnover, those kind of things, a lot of times you don't have great relationships with families in those communities. They can kind of feel a little burnt by it. You know what I mean? Sometimes for whatever reason, sometimes rightfully so in some cases. How do you go about building those relationships with parents in your community?
So there's a couple of things that personally that I try to do. I'm not saying, like, I know some of these things work, some of the things don't. But first of all, every day, like I said, we're visible outside. Parents drop off their kids. They see us standing there. They know that we care. They know that we're welcoming them into the building. And it's a safe space for our kids to go. So that's first and foremost, like being visible. I like being there for concerts when there's concert nights. I like being there for back to school night. I like being in the hallway. I like being in the lunchroom. Visibility, I think, is first and foremost to changing a community outlook. One thing that I like to do, I like to use our school Instagram and Twitter account. I run that. I think it's very important to tell our story. I like to get into classrooms. I like having the teachers share pictures with me that I can put up on our Twitter and Instagram, because the parents see it. Like when I first started, there was a Twitter account. It didn't have many followers, just because it wasn't used enough. The people who were doing it before that were not really social media people. I took it over and we started to drive more people to the social media, especially the Instagram. Within a week or so, we had up and over of 250 people. So our Instagram account is growing. And I know it sounds silly, but in our day and age, social media, Instagram especially, I mean, TikTok and all that, but I don't use that stuff. Instagram for me has really been telling a story, and it's really been a savior. And I say that because not only are parents looking at it, but the students are too. And they're going to tell me that they're not, but I know they are, because when you like a picture, it tells me who liked it. And I go right to the account. I'm like, I see who that is. So you can't hide that from me. So we're telling our story. Our kids are involved. They like seeing each other. They like seeing the things that they're doing in school. That's changing the community, because then the kid goes and says, hey, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, look at this picture on Instagram that's of my best friend, or look at this activity that we did in our class today. I can be using it better to tell our story, but I think for the most part, it's getting there, and it's really very helpful in how we tell our story of our school. Third, I said visibility. I said the Instagram. Third, we like to use a little bit of communication. I think it's very important. Whether we're sending out messages through our district communication system, or if we're sending out newsletters that are strictly for the students, we are communicating a lot of things with our families so that they're in the know. We don't want to hide anything, especially the last 2 years where people were not really in the building. They didn't know what was going on. And there's different stories when kids come home. Their experience for one day may be very different than what is exactly happening. So whether it's a positive or negative experience, we really want to make sure that we are telling the story in some way. So we like to communicate as much as we can, sometimes too much. Sometimes we'll send out 2 or 3 specific emails a week just so parents are in the know and feel like they are part of the kid's day.
That's a good problem to have if you're getting too much communication. That's a good problem.
Right. And hopefully, the parents are looking at it. They're getting texts, they're getting emails. Hopefully they're talking about it when they get home. That's the biggest thing is continuing that conversation as soon as you get home with your students.
Hey guys, if you're listening to this podcast, you have a vested interest in school culture, and I would like to provide you with our newsletter. The Live School Leader is a free monthly newsletter where we provide you articles, PD webinar opportunities, social media links, videos, all sorts of things, including this podcast, to your email on topics like PBIS, classroom management, behavior management, school culture, and student rewards. If you'd like to sign up for the Live School Leader, the link is in the show notes. Have a great day and happy listening.
So a few things stood out to me there. The visibility piece. You talked about being visible at drop off. I've got a girl in elementary school. In her school, I like to brag on them every now and then because they do a great job. But they're out at the pickup line every day, and there's a whole line of teachers like greeting kids as they come in every single day. And then there's a lot of schools that do that. I notice it every day, and my daughter's always excited to go to school. And I don't think those two things are exclusive. I think they have something to do with each other. The other piece, something that I would do, is I worked in a high school, and we had a very transient population, kids in and out, and city school, kids move around. If there was a tour to be given, I would give the tour. I'd love giving tours to parents and families on their first day. I would show them what all the rooms were. I'd show them, I'd introduce them to coaches and like people who are running clubs, and try to get them involved immediately, and make sure that that those offers are out there. I'm saying, like you be welcoming. The other thing you mentioned was social media. That's been something that's come up a couple of times on the podcast in different ways. We talked with a principal from Florida who he ran his own podcast, and it was kind of just for his school community, and it was like basically a newsletter that he would do like we're doing now, but he would just pretty much just read the newsletter, but it was accessible via podcast, so they could listen to it, like if on their commute or whatever. So I thought that was a really cool idea, just going above and beyond. But the social aspect, we're really bad as educators with PR. Like there's good things happening at every school in this country. There's something cool happening every day, and we're really bad about showing people that. And the more that we can show people that, the better. Like the more our community is going to be involved, the more support you're going to have in your school, and just the better your culture is going to be overall. So walk around, take some pictures, put them up on Instagram. Brag on your people. They're doing a good job somewhere in your building, guarantee it.
And I think that's a big thing that you just said there. We're not doing enough. We are bad at PR because I think a lot of it is who really cares? Like, what am I putting this out for? How many parents are actually looking at it? And the teachers get a little nervous because they're always wondering, is it good enough? Is this small lesson really going to be a game changer and people are going to care on social media? Yes. Because if your school, your kid's school had an Instagram or some kind of social media platform, you would want to see exactly what's going on. How many times do we love getting a picture when our kids are in daycare or preschool and like, look what little Johnny made today. It changes your outlook of what's going on in that claroom, in that school.
It doesn't have to be an actual work of art because it was my kid's art.
Right.
It's art to me. Like, but yeah, we talked to Todd Nesloni recently. Actually, just went up a couple of days before we recorded this one, and he said a quote very similar to that because he was talking about his social media in his class, And that very exact thing he mentioned, because teachers have kind of a like everybody's probably doing this, nobody cares kind of feeling. That's not true. It's just not. What you're doing is valuable and it's worth sharing because it's going to help somebody out. And I talked to somebody else the other day, and they were talking about sharing technology ideas, and they were talking about they ran into a teacher who didn't know what Kahoot was, and like you kind of take for granted if you're on social media stuff and you go into PDs and all these things, but like if you're just in your classroom teaching and you don't go to those things, like maybe not, maybe you wouldn't have all these tools and things. So like if you're doing something cool, share it.
It's extremely important. We talk about the outside, it's the inside too. Like, Chris Nessie, a good friend of mine and somebody I do co-host podcast PD with, he always says the greatest PD is the person next door to you. So, while we're trying to look for all these big ideas and these big things on social media, it's going on in our school. Take a look around. Everything you're doing is good enough and it should be shared.
Yeah, absolutely. And all those things that those lines of communication that, highlighting the cool things that are going on in your school, all that stuff creates stronger bonds. If you do those things, you have more folks who come to the school play and the concerts and your ball games and all those things. You start having just a stronger community, and that should be the goal.
That's it. The people you have around you, you talk about getting on the bus. You want those people who are going to be there for you, who are going to drive the bus the right way and sit there and be your passengers. If those people are not going to be there to support you, get them off.
So kind of the last one of those things to address, and I like that we came to it last. So we talked about staff turnover early, about building relationships, and we talked about attendance, getting kids wanting to be at school and feeling welcomed, and having connections, and we talked about parents. How can you communicate better? How can you shine a light on the cool things that are happening in your building? The last piece of that, I think, is behavior. How now? I think I'm going to know. Well, I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to let you answer.
This is the hardest part, right? Behavior is just what do you do? Every day is a different situation. I'm in a middle school, so for me, our kids are still trying to figure out who they are as people and what they're doing, how they communicate. They don't know. In the last couple of years, the idea of being social is so different. How kids talk at home has been different. How they talk in school has been different. Their interactions, their attitudes, they've been so solo. They've been so independent on themselves that when you're asking them to do something, they don't know how to respond and whether it's right or wrong. So discipline has just been, a huge problem lately. Of course, you have small discipline problems, but of course you have the larger ones too. For me, and I'm going to go through this again, the best way to figure out discipline is to build those positive relationships. You're going to get, you talk about your school being a transient school. You're going to get kids coming in and out. You're going to get kids who've been there forever. But I think if you make the connections with the kids, these major discipline problems become extremely minor. Now, is every kid going to come to school and be great little angels and perfect soldiers? No. We talked about, we don't want kids to just fall in line. You want kids to fit into a school. You don't want them to fall in line. You don't want to change who they are. But I think, my thing is just love on these kids as much as you can. I have some new students in our school who are still trying to fit in. It's November. They don't really know our culture, and I'm just trying to work with them because there have been problems. They have been like, physical altercations, because that's how things were solved where they came from in other places, So it's just like talking to them about what the expectations of the school is. And Jordan, I think you're going to go with me on this one. PBIS is something that I'm trying to bring into my school. I'm not going full blown PBIS, but I want to take that positivity and the ideas that we can kind of lift kids up for the good things they're doing to really make a culture and a climate that is strong. Reward systems are fantastic, but we're not there yet. We're at the point where I want to recognize kids for the good things they're doing, whether they're walking down the hallway and holding a door open or picking up someone's notebook. That's the small things that's going to help those kids who I was talking about not fitting in all of a sudden find a place like, hey, I did something and I'm getting recognized for it. Let me see what else I can do. It's that pay it forward mentality. And that's what I want to see, because that's what's going to stop these major discipline problems. One thing I'll share, and I think this is happening to a lot of schools around us, with TikTok challenges last year, our bathrooms were trashed. The only thing that it was a disaster. And every day I was doing work outside the bathroom. I'm going in the bathroom every 15 minutes to check on it. That's finally calming down, because the kids are like, we're really making a bad choice here. And me and the principal have pulled kids aside and just talked about decision making, not just like yelling at them, because it's not always them. It's other kids and they just get caught. But talking about decision making and putting the pieces together for them to see, like, this is our place. You're coming here as it's your house. You wouldn't do this at home. Why are you doing it here? Why would you want to live in this? Why do you want to go back to it an hour later and still see that now there's more garbage added to it? We really want the kids to feel like they belong and that this is their place and not just, a school. This is their place that they come to every single day that they control. Give them a little piece of that. It changes their outlook.
Yeah. So I'm totally with you. And all the things, and the reason this kind of comes last here, all those other things we talked about, building those connections and investing in your staff, and then, the attendance stuff, all those things build into making these behavior conversations just easier, because then you have those relationships to fall back into. The situation is shorter because they know who they're dealing with. Like that's a big deal. If you don't have a relationship with somebody and you have an altercation, it's really tough to walk it back from that kind of stuff, because they don't know you. But if it's the kid you were talking about with the World Series the day before, he's probably going to stop when he sees you because he knows you. That stuff helps. There's some things that are unavoidable, kind of based on the things that happen, but it's how much can you minimize it? How much can you move on from it? Can you get the kid back on some of those things? And teaching them to make better choices. You mentioned PBIS, and there's no harm in teaching kids the right thing to do. Expectations go a long way, and then praising them for doing the right things, I think, is a big deal. And if you've ever been on like a sports team, say you played basketball, if you hit a three and you got praised for it, you'd probably shoot more threes, or if you got praised for playing good defense, you'd probably try hard on defense. It just kind of makes sense. But at the same time, if those things got ignored, or like you just kind of treated it as like, he's supposed to shoot threes, he's supposed to play D. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't want to today. That kind of stuff. So I think that stuff matters, and the more you can kind of teach kids the right thing to do, and then praise them for doing so, because like you said, they're trying to figure out who they are right now. For praising them going the right direction, I think that helps.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm not a softie by any means, and I don't want it to sound like I am, but there's a time and a place to drop the hammer on students.
And I'm not either. I'm PBS guy, but I was a discipline guy too. So
right, but like some teachers, and I'm not saying every teacher, but some teachers, they want the pound of flesh. They want the punishment for the kids. This kid was doing the wrong thing. We got to nail him. No, you don't. You got to teach him, because if you nail him, you lost him. And now you're going to spend the next 6, 7, 8 months with a student who hates you. And how do you think that's going to go for you? And that was always my philosophy. 14 years in a classroom, I didn't just blame kids for anything that they did. I talked to them, built a rapport, figured out what we can do better. And then after that, if you lost trust, then we have problems. But if you can show me that you want to improve and you want to learn and you're going to act a certain way, then we're going to be okay. And I still carry that with me in the seat that I'm in right now.
That's a piece that it's a big deal in a lot of places, that the pound of flesh thing. And like I ran into that a couple times, probably more than a couple. But something I think I should have done better at personally was looping the teacher into the conversation. Here's where this got to. Here's why we think we need to go this way, that kind of thing. And I think it becomes tough whenever you're dealing with a lot of things at once. Like we talked a little bit about before we got on about all the things that happen during the day, and you got 2 hours of lunch duty and all this stuff. It's tough to do everything. But I think if you can include the teacher in the conversation, just so they know, outcomes and rationale and reasoning and stuff, and that goes back to originally what you said about building that relationship with them on the front end. Those conversations are easier if you did that.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say that kind of goes with that losing staff. Like staff, if they don't feel trusted, they don't feel like you're letting them do their job, they don't want to be there. So if you're including them in the conversation and you're working through, where you're at, where they're at, where the kid is at, if you have all of those pieces together, then we start seeing a different piece of a larger puzzle. Then we start figuring out, okay, so this is what the staff believes in. This is what the administration believes in. We really need to work together to be on the same page, and I think that communication keeps people around because they feel like we can be trusted and listened to, and that their words matter.
Yeah, and they feel a part of the school. You have some shared ownership there, which you eventually want to get to with your kids too. Well, AJ, I hope that this finds ears where it can help folks this spring, and as they're going into new jobs and new opportunities, and they're helping turn their schools around and that kind of stuff. Here at the end, I don't want to take up too much more of your time because we talked about how busy you are, man. But if folks wanted to reach out to you, they want to follow you on social media, how could they do so?
Yes. So I'm all over the place. Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Just you can search AJ Bianco. That's me. I'm the dude that looks like Jimmy Garoppolo if you follow football. So if you see my picture, it's actually me. So AJ Bianco all over the place. Check out the podcast, Podcast PD with Chris Nessie, and my personal one, Reflect Ed. Haven't recorded in a while, but I'll get back to it at some point when things slow down. So that's where you can find me. And if you're a Yankees fan, please check out the Yankee podcast, Chase for 28.
The flywheel effect, harnessing the power of momentum to create a school culture that celebrates change and drives itself.